There is just one reality left. We are here and it is now. You get hold of that and hang on to it, or you might as well be dead.
Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch Live, where everyone is entitled to my opinion, and I'm Bill Stone. Well, tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, it is a potpourri, Alex, and I'll take anal bum cover for 800. We will have live viewer call-ins via Skype anytime that you happen to want. We'll talk about the current Lancaster County, Nebraska virus statistics where I live. We will have an update on the Lincoln, Nebraska mask order, which is where I live. We will have a new little thing I'm calling the Woke Report, because apparently the woke are so odious and nasty every single freaking week that there's something useful to talk about there. I will also have a review of Superman and Lois, Season 1, Episode 3, anything else I can think of, and anything else that you may want. Now, this is a live stream, so even if I'm not able to get to you via Skype, you're certainly free to talk with me about anything that you want in chat. You can ask me any question, whether it's political, social, the virus whose name I can't mention without getting my channel and videos ranked even lower than they already are, United States Civil War II, or even things pertaining to science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genres. I'll answer each and every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some personal subjects that I won't discuss, but pretty much anything else is fair game. I'll get to as many of my viewers as possible, with the understanding that I don't really want my stream to go much longer than about 3 hours, because I have lower back arthritis, because I'm an old cisgendered white male. So 3 hours is about all I can cope with. Now, if you would like to call in to the show, I'm doing it via Skype. And since I don't really want to give out my Skype information in public, I'm going to do it this way. If you're interested in talking with me directly, send me an email at callin@sylranch.tv. Give me your Skype information. I'll Skype you back. You can then talk to me about anything that you want. You can call me names. You can say I'm a really hoopy fruit, anything that you like. So again, if you're interested in talking with me directly, send me an email to callin@sylranch.tv. Give me your Skype information. I'll call you back. That email address again is callin@sylranch.tv. Hey, Dalton Bridger, how you doing tonight? Glad to have you here. Starting to go hoarse. That's never a good sign this early in the stream. Hang on. All right, let's see if that helps. So as we wait for some people to trickle in, we'll answer the question that nobody asked. What are this week's Lancaster County virus statistics for where I live? This is, as always, sourced from the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Health Department. There's a link to it in my description box, so you can go take a look at it for yourself. This week's statistics, well, the total population remains roughly constant of the county at 324,216. Total number of tests is now up to 173,412, which is up 1,719 from last week. Excuse me, testing, of course, is not particularly representative of anything, because any given single test can trigger multiple other tests. So just counting the tests doesn't tell you much. The total number of positive cases in Lancaster County is now at 28,670, which is up 343 from last week. This is half as many increases this week as there was last week. We are on a consistent downward trend. That's a good thing. Statistically, however, this number is a minor increase. It really doesn't represent much statistically. The number of vaccines given out this week was 106,807 so far, with the first dose in the series being at 69,214, which is up 16,819 from last week. The second dose in the series is at 37,593, which is up 8,686 from last week. Given all of our other statistics, however, and the way it's generally been trending down, I'd have to say that this vaccine has yet to show any too little effect. Interestingly enough, got my mother the very first of the two vaccine series yesterday, and we'll be getting her the second one in 3 weeks. Not sure that it matters much, but that's what we're doing. Probably is more important for her. She's elderly. The percentage of the population that has been vaccinated, that is given the second dose in the series, is now at about 11.595%, which is up about 2.679% from last week. That's pretty good. Interestingly enough, I talked to a friend of mine, good friend of mine I've known for quite a long time. He's actually my oldest friend, and he lives in Toronto, Canada, and he's saying that much as he sometimes gums down on the U.S., we're doing a much better job of rolling this out than they are in Canada. So, total Lancaster County deaths is at 222, which is up all of 1 from last week, and that's the same increase as the week before. This is a statistically insignificant increase. Not that, you shouldn't be sad if you're the person who's impacted, your loved ones, but statistically, 1 out of 324,000 some people is just not a particular increase. Deaths as a percentage of total tested is a 0.127%, which is down 0.002%, statistically identical last week and has been statistically identical for weeks now with no real change. Deaths as a percentage of positive cases is at 0.7708, which is down 0.0062% from last week. This is a minor drop, but it's still statistically identical really for weeks now. Deaths as a percentage of the population is at 0.0682%, which is identical to last week. That additional death made absolutely no difference in that statistic. It's been statistically identical since the pandemic appeared. There has been no real change, and it is statistically insignificant. More people die of misadventure and other things every year than anything else. Hey, Marshall, I'm early. Well, I don't look early. I look like it's about 9 p.m. my time. I counted down till 9 p.m., so I don't think I'm early. Interestingly enough, tomorrow, or should I say tonight, at midnight, I could be on the stream even when it happens, Lincoln, Nebraska has our current mask order lifted. That only makes sense if you've been following my statistics. This has been a nothing burger from day one and is a nothing burger now. And there's really no reason to have ever had a mask. And there certainly isn't one now. All the stats are on the decline and have been for some time. There's no reason to have a mask. And they're lifting our mask order in this city. I assume that means they're still going to go whining about social distancing and whatnot, but it should at least shut up the stupid Karens that are intent on making you feel somehow miserable if you're not wearing your stupid mask. Hey, Drop of Truth, how you doing? Afternoon, 2:08 p.m. here in Australia. Well, it's about 9:07 p.m. I hear, but glad to have you. Hey, Jeanette, glad to have you as well. With my counter trading strategy, you should now wear one all the time. Oh, you mean the mask? Well, interestingly enough, there's a convenience store down the street from me, just about 4 blocks down. I always wear the stupid giant mask, and they told me outright, even before this mask order was rescinded, he said, hey, we can't enforce that. We're not requiring anybody to walk in here with a mask. If you don't feel like doing it anymore, don't. And I wouldn't, to be perfectly honest, but I don't want to run into the stupid Karens who are whining about it all, because they have succeeded in just absolutely making everybody hysterical about it. So, as I said, I thought I might do a little bit about the woke report. This is something I'm probably going to do because every week it seems like the woke go and do something stupid. And this week, they've done some incredibly stupid things. Mrs. Grundy equals Karens. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. I just use Karens. So the woke have done some exceptionally stupid stuff this week, among other things. They are trying to, once again, cancel Gina Carano. Interestingly enough, during a shareholders meeting, and you can listen to this if you want to, somebody brought up the fact that she was canceled and that other people that had said things that were as bad or worse, but they were from the left, didn't get canceled. Why was she fired instead of them? Is Disney a liberal-only company? Well, I don't remember which dork it was on the other end of the line, but he came up with some non-answer, you know, the usual corporate babble that you always hear about. We should, you know, live in a world, blah, 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 where everything's blah, blah, hunky-dory, blah, 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 never once addressing the actual question that was asked. I would have loved to ask a question like, okay, so if we want to live in this wonderful world, why in the world are you busy, you know, setting up stuff and kissing up to the Chinese, particularly a province that is currently in right now taking religious minorities and sticking them into literal concentration camps, not, you know, border detention areas that are bad, you know, but not concentration camps. I mean, actual concentration camps, and killing them en masse. But no, that question wasn't asked. And he just blabbered on the usual corporate doublespeak that meant absolutely nothing. And it was what you would expect. I wouldn't have expected to ask him anything. No, I'm sorry. I'm not getting that particular, it's a Heinlein reference. Uh-oh, I feel bad. I'm not getting that. Always comforts me to see my towel. Yes, well, always know where your towel is. Don't panic. Always know where your towel is. Twitter, well, they've decided to try screwing Gina Carano again. They're deleting and likes and stuff to posts of hers and, you know, retweets. They're just reducing the number of likes, so 1 minute it'll have 5,000, the next minute it'll have 500. What a surprise! They have, you know, I mean, they think they got her. I think they got her the first time, and they didn't, and then they went nuts, and so they're trying every little way that they can. That's just how the work. If you don't agree with them, then you are screwed. Drew says you should be free from Twitter jail now. You haven't bothered looking. Naughty you for using words from an Oxford dictionary and not a woke one. Yes, absolutely. Gab was fun when it wasn't getting hacked. I haven't paid a hell of a lot of attention to it. I know you were supposed to change your password at one point, which I did. Always do whenever those kind of things come out. But, you know, I'm on so many different social media, and, you know, the ones I really use are down in my description box. But it's impossible to keep track of them all. And, you know, I'm kind of actually happy that really about the only thing that I'm doing is paying attention for marketing reasons. Because if I did more than that, I would run a significant risk of becoming addicted via a dopamine addiction. Most people are addicted to social media that way, and it's not a good thing at all. So compartmentalizing it off like that for myself is probably a good thing. This week, the woke have canceled Steven Crowder again, Louder with Crowder. Now, he, both his YouTube and his Twitter, he has been got kicked off of Twitter, essentially. He has the legal resources to fight this, and is. That's a damned good thing. So few people have the actual resources, the legal resources to fight this sort of thing. That is the only thing that's ever going to get their attention, is if you fight them legally and if you win. You know, the biggest problem, of course, is that, you know, big tech, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Google, they have more money than God. You know, they have entire teams of attorneys whose job it is to deal with this stuff. And all they really need to do to get you off their case is simply snow you under with paperwork. You know, you're going to pay $250 an hour for an attorney, and they can throw any kind of paperwork that they want to at you. Your attorney has to reply, and so they're going to spend $250 every hour just to reply to the paperwork. So you have to have a lot of resources, and you have to be prepared to spend a lot of money. Hopefully, Steven Crowder is prepared to spend that, because setting that precedent of finally being able to win something against them legally would be an awfully good thing. Marshall says, took me over a month to really get over the social media addiction. Not easy, but damn well worth it. Yes, yes. Yeah. You know, the only thing I can say about it is at this point I'm on so many different ones that it's hard to get stuck on any given one. You know, I have different purposes to some extent for all of them. I pay a little more attention to Facebook, a little more attention to Twitter, just because that's the one that everybody's on. But I am trying not to reply very much. Retweet, send out my my marketing memes as responses to tweets, but not really get personally involved in it if I can at all avoid it. Drop 2 says, you live alone, Marshall, so social media is your access to the world. Fun shows like this are a necessity. Well, I'm glad to have you thinking this is a fun show. I always enjoy being here, and I'm always glad to have you here. The woke have also, this week, they had intimidated a small YouTuber whose username is Trillium into deleting her channel. She restarted it. The link to that is below. But this is a person who appears to have had, have some problems dealing with social situations, and so was using YouTube kind of as a way to, help treat with that and how to deal with it. And she was just intimidated the hell out of, I sit in this weird space in science fiction and politics where I'm used to everybody being a complete jerk to each other. So, when I have somebody on Twitter go off about how I'm a total fascist because I like Star Trek, the original series, okay, it's like, what, more of the same? I've been doing this since the 90s. Marshall, you know who I'm talking about. I've been doing this crap since the 90s, and it doesn't faze me in the slightest. But this individual was real fazed, very, very fazed by it indeed. Took down her channel, ended up putting another one back up. And I would ask you, since you hopefully are not woke, and so you don't want to go around, just intimidating people to the point, where they're crying and all that stuff, show her channel a little bit of love, It's always good, even if you're not that into her content. I sub to her because I think anybody that's getting shoved like that by the woke deserves to have more subs. She's come back in with significantly more subs as a result of this. A couple of other YouTubers are pointing out what's happened to her. Please, go give her a little love. If you happen to like what she's doing, sub to it. Maybe don't like it, sub to it anyway. Just to show her that, hey, not everybody out there is a complete a-hole. We are behind you when they start screwing with you like that. Let's see. Talking about Facebook there. Find yourself anything to occupy yourself. Facebook, Twitter, etc. are very destructive. Hell, learn how to trade crypto, Marshall says. Got to get that show going for that, Marshall. Haven't been on social media in almost a year. Dalton says, yes, that's a good thing for you. It really does. I'll get the link to it and put it in my description box. But it was discovered it was first documented in 2012 that it really does create what amounts to, it's a little simplistic to say this, but what amounts to a dopamine addiction. It has to do with what's called reward-based behavior. If you get a like or a love or something like that on one of your tweets or a post, that creates this dopamine in your brain that's making you feel better. And so you anticipate getting that dopamine rush the next time that you post something, and the next time, and the next time. So you're anticipating, hoping, getting this, and not consciously, but your brain is. It's real insidious, and the worst part about it is that the big tech companies have this as a part of their business model. They really are scum. Having worked for different companies, but had companies that kowtowed largely to their marketing departments, I am absolutely sure that they have meetings about how to best exploit this dopamine addiction. They are nothing less than drug dealers. It's no better than somebody who's given out, free heroin on the street in the hopes that they're going to hook somebody and make money off them later. That's exactly what's happening here. They're drug dealers of the worst kind. I'm sure that they actually have meetings where they sit down and they talk about how best to get you addicted. They're really horrifying. Really, really horrifying. If I didn't need them for my marketing, I wouldn't have them at all. Drop 2 saying, Marshall, I'm not dependent on social media. Read, watch what I like. Have your hobbies. Good. House, repairs, etc. Investigations into alternative energy. Awesome. Social media is also a time-wasting exercise like owning a cat. It depends what you think about cats. But, yeah, it's toxic. A lot of it's toxic. Just really toxic. And if I didn't need it for what I'm doing, I wouldn't be on it at all. So do give this Trillium a bit of love. the link in my description box. You know, even if you don't necessarily like the content, I'd still suggest try subbing, just to let her know that, you know, those of us who are kind to people outweigh those who are complete a-holes. Another thing the woke that successfully did this week is canceled Pepe Le Pew. The Looney Tunes character, he's a skunk, you probably remember him, constantly trying to woo a cat who has been painted down the back, usually accidentally, to look like a skunk. But they, hey, Jeanette, thanks, cool, that's awesome. But they, they've decided that Pepe Le Pew is too rapey, and so they have canceled him. He will not be appearing in any future Warner Brothers cartoons. He has been cut from Space Jam 2, which I believe is currently underway in production, and will not be done again. You know, again, one of those things, like I said last week, you know, you can watch a cartoon and see Pepe Le Pew getting all grabby with her and stuff, and know that this is not the way you're supposed to behave. This is supposed to be funny. You know, it's not rapey. It's just everybody watching this knows that you don't grab women and hang on to them and, you know, have them squirming to get away from you. Everybody knows that. Didn't make us rapists. It made us well-adjusted children to see that. It's freaking ridiculous. I read your Volvo observation on Gab. I did not. It's been a weird couple of days for personal reasons. Part of it was going and getting my mom her first of the 2 virus vaccines, but there was some other stuff, related things going on behind that, so I haven't had a chance to look at it very hard. I'll take a look at it for sure when I'm done and I get a moment to do something with it. So yeah, they've successfully canceled Pepe Le Pew. Yet another thing that the woke have absolutely no sense of humor whatsoever, and they decided that he was too rapey, and anybody watching him was apparently in danger of becoming some crazed rapist, and so they canceled him. And my suggestion is, as soon as humanly possible, get yourselves copies of all Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies from the early Bosco and Honey cartoons, which predate Bugs Bunny and that. Get all of them up through, you know, I guess about a year or so ago. That'll keep you at least having the cartoons, so that when somebody finds out there on YouTube and says, oh, we shouldn't have cartoons with Pepe Le Pew on it, shouldn't have cartoons with Speedy Gonzales on it, and they start taking them down, at least you'll have a copy. You know, it's only a matter of time before, you know, videos start taking it down. I tell you, the most amusing thing, however, if you really want to see something that is intentionally very, very, very offensive, look for most offensive videos. In particular, look for like a Charlie Brown Kwanzaa or the Fat Albert Kwanzaa special. It's all made by the same people. It was made at least, God, I guess it's about 15 years ago now. I'm amazed whenever I still see them on YouTube. I'm just waiting. You want really offensive stuff, that's really offensive. I mean, it's intentional. You know, it's intentional satire, but it's still, you know, if you're going to be offended by something woke, go take a look at those, you morons. I bet you don't even know they exist, you stupid woke. Yes, Drama 2 says, Pepe Le Pew and his Maurice Chevalier voice, yes. Ah, my little bonbon, yes. What was the line I used to do? Don't remember, but yes, I love the voice. Another great Mel Blanc voice that's now going to be silenced because the woke can't imagine that people might watch this and simultaneously understand that rape is a bad thing because they're woke. Okay, another interesting one that floated around. Jim Marshall says, we need a Star Wars Kwanzaa special. Oh, boy. Oh boy, another holiday special of any kind. I'm not even sure that the Star Wars holiday special wouldn't maybe sort of qualify as a Kwanzaa special. I don't know. But check out the Fat Albert Kwanzaa special. That's I frankly, hey, well, guys, guess what? I think that's really funny. I get they're doing, the twist they're doing on racism and stereotypes and all that. I totally get it, but it's still freaking funny as hell. Sue me. I have a sense of humor. You do not. Another thing that popped up today, this week on social media with the woke very recently was, turns out that not only am I a fascist because I like Star Trek the original series, I'm also transphobic because I will only date heterosexual females who were born with and still possess a vagina. Seriously, I mean, I've seen this coming up from time to time, you know, and I haven't taken it too terribly seriously until this week because somebody came up with an interesting meme for this. It was the super straight meme. You know, taking advantage of the fact that the woke tend to create new genders within every 5 to 10 minutes or so, some of which have no basis whatsoever in reality. This started going around where they created a gender called super straight. And that really pissed them off because the hashtag super straight was starting to trend and may still be to some extent on Twitter. And that really caused them to flip the hell out. Oh, my God. If you can go on Twitter and just search for super straight, and you will see, oh, man, they freaking lose it. They just totally freaking lose it. And, you know, what I just don't understand is, why is there a problem with me only wanting to date and have sex with heterosexual females who were born with and still possess a vagina? Why is that a problem, even? You know, it's, oh, well, you're transphobic because you won't date or have sex with a trans female. Yeah, you mean somebody who was born with and still possesses a penis. Yes, you're absolutely right. I won't. Sorry, no interest. Actually has a complete turnoff deal, you know. Drop 2 says, since the 70s, U.S. TV and films have had middle-class, law-abiding, and educated folks drive Volvos. Are Volvos that popular in the U.S.? Kevin Costner mocked this in Mr. Brooks, a film I love. I don't honestly notice that I've noticed Volvos any more particularly than anything else. But I do live in a part of the country where, you know, SUVs and off-road vehicles aren't all that uncommon. SUVs, pickup trucks, stuff like that. So I don't really notice Volvos so much. I tend to see other things, so I don't know about that. But in any case, if you want to really piss off the woke right now, go over on Twitter and use the hashtag #superstraight. Because if you're a heterosexual, cisgendered white male like myself, I am now transphobic because I will not consider dating an individual who was born with and still possesses a penis. How stupid can you get? Got some interesting reports. Whoops, sorry, I was in the wrong card there. Got some interesting reports this week about BLM. They are now harassing people in the streets. This is not unusual, really. We are up now to our 290th straight day. I'll talk about this in a minute. But we did get some interesting, you know, a little bit of footage here. Here they're going to harass some cheerleaders.
Black mothers are burying their babies while white mothers send their children to cheer competitions. Do something black today with your white privilege, thank you. Do something black today with your white privilege, thank you.
Yeah, you're actually right, Dalton. There were some black cheerleaders in there as well. It's just the usual nonsense that they've been doing. Johnny Arcade, Antifa tried to take over Chase Bank in Portland today. Security pulled his weapon. I'm not shocked by any of that. Not shocked even remotely. I'll explain why momentarily, but appreciate you letting me know that. We got the usual. It's been 290 straight days of this crap. I'll speak about that more directly in a second. We also had the BLM harassing some other people, also generally younger.
Mommy, I'm so scared. Mommy, they're
Hello. You owe me food.
I'll get it. Food coming.
Huh?
You, deal.
I didn't do a good job, but it's okay.
You should try it.
We've got one holding their fist.
I am now back. Went on a hiatus to get some protein. I hadn't eaten yet today, so something tells me I better fuel up.
Well, I mean, you get the drift. You know, they were going around and harassing people in Louisville for no good reason. We got to tell you guys, you have basically lost any goodwill that you had. I assume from other people and not just myself. Myself, you had very little goodwill to go into it, but I suspect that you've pretty much lost it with everybody with your stupid tactics. This is not going to help you. It's making things worse. Drop truth, you're talking about Lois Lane driving a Volvo, Will Smith's lawyer. I suspect maybe in Hollywood that just has more to do with who pays for the product placement, but I couldn't tell you. None of this, as anybody watches me for very long knows, comes as any kind of surprise to me because we are now, as of today, on our 290th straight day of rioting, looting, arson, robbery, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and the murder of innocents somewhere in the United States. 290 straight days. And if you don't know this, it's because you've probably been listening to the press. And the press will not report it except when absolutely forced to. I always tell people, my regular viewers have heard this a million times, but here it goes again. I have had a lengthy, now 41-year hobby of debunking the press. It's at a point where if you give me any news story from any news source, inside of about 30 minutes I can prove one of three things. That the event being reported never happened, that it didn't happen as it was reported, or if you strip away a slick interface, emotionally loaded language, filler, and opinion, you're left with a few paragraphs at best. And I have an open, absolutely open thing from my audience, an open challenge. If you want me to do this for you, I'd love to do it some night. Send me a print copy of something that I can find on the web, because print works a little easier for when I put it over here. Find me a print copy of any story at all. Doesn't matter. I won't read it in advance. And right before your very eyes, I will spend my time debunking it for you. Nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. And that includes not telling people about what's going on with BLM. And this is not particularly an unusual trend for them. I remember in the 2016 Republican National Convention, I was listening to where I get my news, not from the press. And I was hearing stuff that would just about curl your toes. Where you should be getting your news is from first responder frequencies, and that's very easy these days to do either on the web or on your mobile device. I have links to two of them, the ones that I use in my description box. One is for broadcastify.com, which is a website where you can find just about anything that you want from any first responder anywhere in the country, provided they haven't gone to an encrypted frequency, which is becoming more common. And there's a similar application, Scanner Radio, which is what I use. I have, on my handheld device, I have thresholds set up on it so that if my local number of listeners to my local police frequency goes beyond a certain level, I go, oh, probably something weird going on. When you get into farther away things, I may have the threshold set a bit higher. But it'll alert me whenever there's something particularly interesting going on. For 290 days straight, somewhere in this country, there has been rioting, looting, robbery, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and the murder of innocents. None of that surprises me. And it doesn't surprise me that they don't report it because, again, really hit me when I was, not that it was new. I've been doing this for 41 years. But in the 2016 Republican National Convention, the press was reporting that there were peaceful protesters outside, when in fact, on one particular day, they were going around, these peaceful protesters were going around and injecting people with numbing agents. A number of people went to the hospital, including law enforcement, because they had injected it in areas that would affect their heart or their lungs. This was not anything remotely like peaceful, other than they weren't punching you out. They were just injecting you with things. But you never heard about that. The press would never report about that because it didn't fit their narrative. Similarly here, for 290 straight days, things that you have not heard, with the exception of when they've been absolutely forced to cover it, would just about fill the Grand Canyon. Always listen to first responder frequencies and watch YouTube streams or other live streamers where they are giving you basically just pointing their cameras at some event and shutting up and not giving you opinions and not giving you a talking head or anything like that, just letting you look at what's happening and you come to your own conclusions about it. Those are the best places for information. Drop 2 says, Dre Dictator, which is a Charlie Chaplin reference. Yes. Premier Daniel Andrews of Victoria in Australia had a fall this week. To quote Basil Fawlty, I hope it wasn't trivial. Marshall says, BLM, Antifa, hydroxychloroquine, virus statistics, in context quotes, actual accomplishments. We basically got no real data in the past year from the MSM. We never have. We never really have. I always say to people, I'm pretty sure that the scribes who were carving hieroglyphs in stone for the pharaohs were probably kind of talking up the pharaohs. They didn't really talk about the bad stuff they did. I am reasonably certain that if you go back to cave paintings, what you're going to see are paintings not of Ugg, the average guy in the tribe, but it's going to be of Ugg, the chief of the tribe. I do not believe that at any time, and I'll put the link for it again. There is a great film, the 1931 edition of the film The Front Page, which is about a bunch of newspaper reporters covering a hanging. And the movie was originally a stage play, and it was written by two then contemporaneous Chicago reporters. And they're very clear that all of the stuff that you see the reporters doing in there is straight from their own experience. If you take that movie, you update it to modern technology, and what you find is not a damn thing has changed. It's exactly the same. And you get, of course, the turn of the century-ish, the Hearst newspaper syndicate who got the United States or helped very much push the United States into the Spanish-American War. Nothing you see in the press is real. It never has been. And you have to look hard to find the real stuff. Fortunately, first responder frequencies are easy to get, as are live streams of people just pointing their cameras and shutting up. Let's see. Wasn't the Star Wars Christmas special enough? It was the Star Wars Holiday Special. Not just Christmas, because it came, I think, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. You can get a hydroxychloroquine prescription here in Australia, but the doctors try to talk you out of it. Yeah, I don't know for sure what the status is here because I have never asked or checked. All I know is we've got my mom the first of the two vaccines that you need supposedly to be completely vaccinated. Marshall, I'm not sure which prediction about last August you were mentioning about. There are so many things that come and go in my brain, and I can't keep them anymore. As Professor Zarkov said in the Flash Gordon 1981 movie, my mind is all I have. And please, I tried. It took me my whole life to try to fill it, and some of it's falling out a little bit. Marshall says you can get it here now. Drop the hydroxychloroquine. Yes, odd that it happened about 8 days after the inauguration. Not that odd, because Orange Man bad, but. Drop 2 says pharaohs were also displayed as much larger than the common folk to portray their power and prestige. They weren't giants like the cretins at ancient aliens say. Oh, of course not. No. I can't imagine there's a single point in history when those who were writing the history, those who were reporting events, did not some way skew them towards the people who had the power and the authority, or skew with some kind of agenda. You know, I look at the American Revolution, right? Well, if you look at some of what was being said by the revolutionaries, it kind of stretched the truth a little bit. But the point was to agitate people into wanting to be in favor of the revolution. That always happens, and we're seeing it now, same as we always have. Marcia says, oh, yes, you predicted that HCQ would be made available shortly after Trump left office. Yep, thank you. I know that you made that. You're not the only one of my friends who said that, and I'm not even remotely surprised. Orange Man bad, after all. I mean, right now, I can't tell if it's that he has, it's his senile dementia talking, or if Biden actually believes that there was no vaccine prior to him taking office. But there's something, again, the press is not going to talk about. He has said that on multiple occasions. It is patently and provably untrue. So, but they let that slide because he's a Democrat and Orange Man bad, you know. Drop 2 says, propaganda bill, politicians and royalties have always used it. Yes, and today's quote-unquote free press in the United States is nothing more than rank propagandists of the lowest order, I might add. They really are scumbags. I don't know how they can live with themselves. You know, what you need to understand is I have a friend who was a anchor person at a couple of different places, female. And the problem with being female and being in front of the camera is you age out of that a lot faster than men do. So she aged out of that, I think, sometime in her 40s and went to what they usually do when, you know, reporters and anchor people and stuff, when they no longer can be in front of the camera and do stuff or can't move on to producing or something like that. What they usually do is they go and they work for public relations firms, advertisers, marketing. That should tell you volumes about what they really do. You know, then when it's over for them, they go and do real propaganda with advertising and marketing. You know. But that, I guess, is this week in the woke. I'm sure there's other things that I maybe didn't mention or don't know about because those idiots are always going on about it. But I get a kick out of the fact that I'm transphobic because I want to date people who have vaginas, preferably heterosexual, but hey, I'm open-minded about that part of it. But I just astonishes me because, I mean, I'd seen that little thing coming up for months now. You know, people starting to say, oh, if you don't date trans women, then you're some kind of transphobe. And trust me, I'm not afraid of them. They can exist. I don't care. I just won't be dating them. I will not be having sex with them. Sorry, ain't gonna happen. So, this particular show has less in terms of prepared content than you might think because this is a potpourri. I will take anal bum cover for 200. So I'm going to go straight off of this into my review of Superman and Lois, Season 1, Episode 3. But before I do it, Drop 2 says Meghan Markle has accused the Queen of the UK as being a racist. No, that would have been Prince Philip. He's former SS youth and is as eugenically racist as you can get. To be honest, I have not been paying the slightest bit of attention with what's going on with the royals. I know, that there's been this and that said about them. And there was an interview with them and all of that. But, they're not mine. I don't really care. I'm sorry, Drop of Truth. You get to have some of that because they're kind of yours, but they're not mine. I got my own problems in my country. I can't deal with what's going on with other ones, and for the most part, I just don't care. I just don't care. Aside from, was Prince Andrew involved in screwing children with Jeffrey Epstein and all of that I care about. But I don't think we're ever going to find out the truth if he did. I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I really just don't pay much attention to that. Another shadow ripoff. Yes, I'm about to talk about that. This is a birthday, according to a 1972 calendar put out by DC Comics. Today is the birthday of Lee Travis, the Crimson Avenger. He debuted in Detective Comics number 20 in October of 1938, which preceded Batman by a few issues, and he was only a few months after Superman. In some ways, yes, very similar to the Shadow, similar also to the Green Hornet in terms of, what he can do in his stuff. He did eventually... Oh, hey, Jeanette, have a great night yourself as well if you're headed out. He did eventually give up the suit that you see here for in World War II for a more colorful suit, cape, with a hat and cape and everything. Well, I didn't have a cape, but, costume like you'd expect a superhero to wear. He also had a sidekick, whom you're not seeing here, who was, much like Kato of the Green Hornet, was also his valet and his chauffeur. That guy, he was Asian. His name was Wing. It was always Crimson Avenger and Wing. And despite the fact that Wing was also the name he used in civilian life, it was the golden age. It was a simpler time. Nobody apparently thought twice about an Asian guy who was this guy's sidekick and was driving the car. It's Asian. We don't care. Apparently that was the attitude then. So. But anyway, Woke, you can go ahead, try to cancel him if you want to. We all know you do. We all know you want to cancel them. So, my review here, unlike most reviewers, as always, I don't go over the plot and just rehash it, pausing to say what I liked or didn't like. We'll just have to take it as read that if you come to this review looking for this video looking for a review, you've already seen Superman and Lois Season 1, Episode 3, or you just don't care if it's spoiled. Nevertheless, for safety's sake, for those of you who haven't, we should probably issue a...
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and that is because I am a secret master of fandom, and that means that the fandom is strong with me. Now, this isn't a boast or a brag. This is just where you find yourself after having watched, read, and listened to over 100 years' worth of science fiction. But the problem with Secret Masters of Fandom is that we are cursed. We cannot see this new stuff without seeing the whole century that came before. We discover that very little, frankly, that's very original, and sometimes it interferes with our ability to enjoy things. But I do not do outrage reviews because there are a lot of reviewers on YouTube who are simply actors, portraying outrage because outrage tends to sell. They hate everything with a knee-jerk reflex because their viewers like to see them hate things. But this causes a weird feedback loop between fans and popular reviewers where ultimately nobody likes anything. But I don't do that. If I like something, I'll tell you why in detail. If I dislike something, I'll tell you why in detail. Unlike other reviewers, I am the adult in this particular room. Dropper 2 saying you downloaded the Shadow radio shows from archive.org. Yep, free and legal. Absolutely. Yes, they're everything archive.org does not in addition to just being able to download it. They have torrents. They're at least I know I'm perma-seeding a very large torrent with all of the Dragnet radio series in it. So you can pull that down in perma-seed like I'm doing. I figure it's my duty to give back. But you can always pull those down as torrents and then just seed forever like I'm doing. I always push BitTorrent if you can because it's a little hard to stop people from using, and B, it's kind of, if you're doing what I'm doing, sort of giving back with the content and letting it stay up there forever. But yes, Lee Travis was a bit like the Shadow, not as much as you'd think. You can tell from the way that it looks kind of a ripoff. But everybody was doing that to a certain extent. The entire Golden Age was just people ripping other people off. Captain Marvel got into huge problems because it was too much like Superman. So anyway, I'm not going to go into extraordinary depth on this, which is probably too bad. I have the time. Very likely, it's only been less than an hour. But the bad guys on this one now have got me scratching my head just a little bit. I'm wondering, do we have multiple bad guys? Is this all related to one subplot? One would hope it's related to the same subplot, because if you're going to have multiple subplots in only 15 episodes, it doesn't leave you a lot of time to really get into one subplot or the other. So I hope that they're somehow related. I don't know. If they are, they're doing a good job of allaying at least one of my fears that I had last week, which was it looks like some kind of alternate universe story. And I've seen a lot of alternate universe stories, so it's hard to surprise me. But if they're doing something like that with multiple villains, they have... this last one surprised me. I did not see those villains coming, so good on that. I mentioned last week that I was no longer certain whether Tyler Hoechlin's costume, Superman costume, is all a muscle suit. Drop of Truth, you'd mentioned on social media that, yeah, it was. The thing about it is, this is 3 years ago, when he bulked up to play a character in the movie, what the hell was it? I can't see the name of the film on my... in the movie Bigger, he bulked up to play a bodybuilder. Now, it's been 3 years, so, I mean, presumably he could have, obviously not decided to keep up with that, and gotten smaller. But if he has not, here is a man who does not need a muscle suit. Put him in spandex and he will be just fine. And there's lots of other pictures of him from that film. So if he's anything like that now, just get rid of the stupid muscle suit, whatever the hell he's wearing that looks like a muscle suit. Give him spandex like, Chris Reeve had, and just leave it at that. You don't need to do these weird details and stuff that you got, Chris Reeve was in spandex on a huge, gigantic screen with tons and tons of detail, and nobody thought it was wrong. There's nothing wrong with spandex, guys. There really isn't. Put him in spandex. It'll look better. Otherwise, if he's, gotten considerably smaller than this, time to put him on Christopher Reeve's Superman diet and get him bigger again. Drop Juice says, I said an augmented muscle suit. No one has this. Oh, yeah, the six-pack abs 100% of the time. Yeah, that's clearly just drawn onto the suit. No question about that. I think it's pretty obviously drawn onto the suit. Again, forget that stuff, guys. Just forget it. Don't get weird with the, the heavily detailed costume and stuff. Just put him in spandex. If he's looking like this, just put him in the spandex. He'll look fine. You don't have to get with all those weird details and whatnot on the suit. Just put him in the spandex. He'll be fine. You don't have to get weird about this. So, thanks for correcting me, though, Drop of Truth. Still have to wonder, why is Clark wearing his glasses around the farm all the time? It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? What would be the point of wearing glasses when you're... he and his family all know who he is. He doesn't have to be wearing them at all. Why? Just keep them in a pocket in case somebody comes by. Which, actually, honestly, when you're working a farm like that, visitors are largely few and far between. There's really no reason he has to wear those things when he's around the farm. And again, I always just have to say, man, I'm sorry. Call me old school, but put the damn trunks back on the costume. I know people go, ha 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 ha, Superman's wearing his underwear on the outside of his shirt. No, it's not what he's wearing. It's not his underwear. It's trunks that were very similar to what strongmen, circus strongmen, circa the 1920s, 30s used to wear. There's nothing wrong with that. Honestly, just give him back the trunks. I think it looks stupid without it. I think it always has. The car bomb. Oh, man. This is a small town. Small towns don't get car bombs, right? The moment that there was a car bomb, there should have been not just Lois and the editor going around and wondering at that and stuff. That would have involved everybody in the immediate vicinity. Best thing I can describe this as, I was working at a summer stock theater one time. Believe it was the summer of 89, summer of 1989. And it was a dinner theater that it wasn't an actual riverboat, but it was made up to look as though it was a riverboat. And so there was this upstairs area that would have been, had it been an actual riverboat, where it would have been, you know, cruise quarters and engineering stuff like that up towards the top. And that's where the kitchen and all of that stuff was. And then there was an elevator that took it down one floor to take it onto the main floor, which was where all of the audience sat. Well, this was a modified sort of freight elevator. And every day they'd load up stuff. Sometimes we'd help, because when you're doing summer stock, you do more than one job. And you'd load this sucker up with as much dishes as you possibly could, send it down, and then unload it, and maybe do that a couple of times. Well, one time we loaded it up and the cable snapped. And this whole thing of dishes just came crashing down, and only one story was enough to turn every piece of glass in there, and it was all glass, into dust. Absolute dust. Fortunately, there was no one riding on it at the time, but there was a girl who was, you know, one of the servers and stuff, who was down below, who was near enough at it that she got sprayed with glass dust and had to go to the hospital. So here we are with all of this stuff that had crashed, and everybody in town coming around to see what they could do to help. And we're completely out of any kind of dishes, half the dishes probably for that evening. We didn't have them anymore. So this town got together and figured out how they were going to get us enough dishes to do the show that night. That's the level of involvement you get in a small town like that. You get a car bomb, just, yeah, that's going to be a huge deal. Not only that, it means that Lois is going to suddenly get all kinds of sympathy that she wasn't getting before. I mean, if she thought she was an outcast in the town, getting a car bomb, that is going to make her, you know, part of the town right there. They are going to embrace her because of that. They don't get car bombs. You know, that happens. She's on to something. You're one of us. We're going to protect you. That's how those small towns actually work. You know, when something bad happens, they pull together, and it's amazing. You know, I thought, man, we're screwed. I mean, how are half our patrons going to eat? No, it wasn't a problem. You know, 3 hours after that elevator dropped and shattered everything into glass, we had our enough silverware and plates and whatnot to outfit the half that had been crushed. But it was really fascinating because, you know, you see in movies, you know, where elevators will drop down the shaft and maybe people will survive and stuff like that. And I'm here to tell you, man, one elevator loaded up with glass dropped one story, and I am not in the slightest exaggerating, shattered it all into dust. Just absolute dust. As I say, there was that one woman a girl standing at the bottom. She wasn't hit by it or anything, wasn't clipped, but the dust flew up in this cloud and got her arm. And she had to go to the hospital, and they were taking out individual little dust pieces for like 3 hours. You know, it was crazy. Drop 2 says Johnny Weissmuller's Tarzan. Yes, you're showing your age again. Oh, yeah, well, Johnny Weissmuller's Tarzan. You know, I like the 2 movies that are pre-code. I believe it's Tarzan of the Apes and Tarzan and His Mate. They are pre-code. That means that it predates the Hayes Office code for movies. Basically, before code, you could do just about anything you wanted in movies. Post-code, you had to clean it up quite a lot. Tarzan and His Mate has nude scenes with Jane and some loincloths that really should... I am unclear how they stayed on her body. Postcode, where they lived turned into a giant treehouse, and Jane started wearing mini dresses. But pre-code are very interesting that way. Anyway, that car bomb should have been a major turning point for Lois. It should have been a huge turning point for the whole family. That everybody would have said, "Oh my God, you know, this isn't crazy, and you know, we're going to come together." That's what happens in small towns like that. It isn't something where it blows up and you stare there and just looking at your car burning. It's you're looking at your car burning, and 5 million other people are coming around, and the local fire department is about to pull up in 3 minutes. You know, it's not something that just gets, oh, look, there's a car burning in the street. Isn't that interesting? No, that ain't how it works at all in a small town. That should have been a much bigger deal in terms of portraying how the townspeople react to something so utterly bizarre and outside of their experience. Because trust me, nobody in Smallville has ever gotten car bombed before. So, Ron Eli, good TV Tarzan. I don't really know that much about the TV Tarzan. I really only paid a hell of a lot of attention, to be honest, to Johnny Weissmuller, a couple of the others, but I prefer him more than anybody else in the pre-code Tarzan movies. The two of them more than probably the post-code ones. I've said before, working farm needs to be worked, and all the families should be working it. And we did see this time Clark spending a minuscule amount of time on working on a very old, ancient tractor that is not used today. When my grandparents had their ranch, they had a tractor like that. It was sitting unused out in a field, which is where you dumped stuff that you never used. Oh, you might need to turn it over once in a while just in case, but that tractor is pretty much old, and it's not the sort of thing that's going to get used. Guys, you know, I like how you've been very kind to us with this show about those of us who live in this part of the country, because Kansas is as close to Nebraska as doesn't matter. It borders us on the south. I like that you've been very kind to us, but you need to understand that modern agriculture is done with a lot of diesel-powered heavy equipment, a lot of it. It isn't that tractor, and it isn't putting things attached to that tractor. It is combines. It is hay balers. You know, we've got equipment that can churn out hay bales that are the size of an SUV. You know, they can spit those out. Machines large enough to cut down grass, turn it into a bale of hay the size of an SUV or larger, and then spit that out. You know, that's the kind of heavy equipment that we use. I don't use it. I live in the city, but I know, you know, rural area. That's the kind of heavy equipment that rural people use now. And having Clark fiddling with that tractor was a little too much stereotypical. You know, if you're really interested in how that stuff works, call me. Send me an email to callin@sylranch.tv. I'll get it, and I'll be happy to talk to you about the details. If this keeps going on, next week I will make certain to have pictures of what sort of equipment is used on modern farms. Modern farms are huge. Many of them can be larger. An individual farmer can have a farm larger than either the New York City or Los Angeles metro areas. You don't tend that kind of land tract with the tractor that we saw. You tend that with large, heavy equipment, diesel-powered equipment. So, call me, guys. We're still not really, from my mind, seeing enough working of that farm. You know, that should be something that is, yes, a full-time job for Clark if he didn't have superpowers, but should also involve the rest of the family, particularly his kids. They should be training to take over in case he dies or something. Drop 2 says some of the old Eiger tractors were single piston. Get a massage at the same time as the plowing. Oh, yeah, once or twice. You know, I actually drove a really old tractor that was, yeah, the seats were metal. And they didn't have springs. It was just a piece of, you know, seats like this, and you have another piece of metal underneath that would curve down and connect up to the rest of the tractor. So you just bouncing everywhere. Yeah, absolutely. But again, not something that I recall being used very often. I know when that was used. That older tractor was only used when we were taking pieces of large hay bales or hay stacks at the time, and it had an attachment on the front that it was basically like a giant fork, and you would, you know, shove it into the hay bale, lift it up, drive it over to where the cattle were in the corral, and drop it off there. And that was the only thing we really used that for. Certainly didn't use it to actually create the hay bale in question. That was too big. But using it to get chunks of it and over to the animals that were nearby, yes, we did that. But in terms of what he's got, terms of the land that Clark is tending, he needs heavy equipment and a lot of it. So we should be seeing some of that. Definitely always love the relationship between Jonathan and Jordan. They are the idealized, so far, the idealized version of my own kids. Kind of have each other's backs. Even when one appears to be horning in on the other one's territory, where Jordan was getting on the football team, Jonathan wasn't all down about it. He wasn't, no, I got to have this. This is my thing. He shouldn't do this. He wasn't doing that. He outright said it towards the end of the episode when he was talking to Clark. You should see Jordan. He's doing really well with this. It's helping him. He needs to keep doing this. It's great. I mean, it would have been so easy to turn this into a teen drama where it's, brother versus brother, but it's not. And these guys do have each other's backs, and I love that. I'm liking seeing something that's not a frickin', not a dysfunctional family. There are so many families on TV and movies that are just dysfunctional, and it would be so easy to write these as dysfunctional, but so far they have not. They've written them in what I think is a good way that's showing us that families can work this stuff out, and it doesn't have to be dysfunctional and stupid. So, yay for them so far. I'm really liking that. Drop 2 saying the flywheel engines of that time period were brilliant, so they should bring them back. I don't know much about the engines. I just remember sitting in that seat a few times. I didn't do much of it. I sat in it a few times, but at the time, my grandfather didn't really trust me to correctly use the attachment on the front to get things up and around. I was the guy who was basically opening and closing the gate to the corral and making sure that the cattle didn't get out. So I don't know for sure what he had. He also had a really, really old antique tractor that didn't even have rubber for tires. It was big, wide, flat metal tires with bumps in them so that it would have some traction. But that was really old, and I don't think that had been even turned over for decades. It was some kind of antique that somebody's grandfather, great-grandfather left out there in the field, because that's what you do with stuff. There's nowhere else to take it, so you just leave it out in the field. My father has I want to say it's a 1943 Ford that's when he passed away, he has it. It's still there. That he was in the process of refitting and getting to working condition. That was his very first car. When he was like 15, 16 years old, he bought the thing, brought it home. It was a piece of junk. It went out to the field with all of where they had these cars that, had turned into pieces of junk after you run them into the ground, drive them out to this field and leave them there because there's nowhere else to take it. You can't, where would you put it? So there was just this field with, an area with old beat up cars in it. When my grandparents finally retired from cattle ranching, he dragged that sucker back to Nebraska and had been working on it right up until about his death, off and on. So that's sitting up there. I believe my one of my grandnephews gets it. It's an interesting car. It can certainly be made into something that would be very vintage and very cool looking, but it'd take more money and know-how than I certainly have. My dad had it. Anyway, like I say, like seeing this relationship between Jordan and Jonathan. I like the fact that Jordan is, by virtue of getting on the football team, he is now having... it's helping with what we've seen described as a disorder for interacting with people, and that's cool. Him using it as a way to basically get with the bullies and say, okay, I shouldn't have kissed your girlfriend. That was uncool of me. Are we good? And it's a way that males do that sort of thing, right? This is something that a lot of times in this kind of drama they'd get wrong, because they don't understand the difference between the way males and females fight. Men usually, if you have some kind of disagreement, if you get into a physical altercation of some kind, somebody comes out on top, and that's it. They're done. Nothing more is ever said of it ever again. Women are a little different. They tend to remain vindictive. It's not, if you have the fight, it isn't just over. It'll come up later. This is one of those things that really, really, really frustrates men. We figure, okay, we've had the argument, we're done. And it turns out, 3 months down the road, that, oh, you're bringing that back up again? So to see this written the way that you would expect to see males handling this, where, the bully gets tackled by Jordan, and he helps him up, says, listen, dude, I'm sorry. It was not cool of me to do that. Are we good? Yes. Done. Great way to do it. Very well written, I thought. Drabazoo says, after my review of Superman Lois, can we give an opinion of WandaVision, disappointing CGI finale fest that's MCU for you? I'll talk about it a little bit. I'll tell you why I won't talk about it much then. But anyway, very good episode. We always say it towards the end of any review, is it any good? Yes, absolutely. As always, as with the first 2 episodes, watch this show. My scale is 1 is passable, 5 is Hugo Award worthy, because frack the Emmys, they don't matter. I would certainly give this episode a nice solid 4. It's not going to win any Hugos, but at the same time, it is still a damn fine episode. It is the best live-action Superman put to the large or the small screen since Richard Donner's 1978 Superman movie, and is certainly the best Superman on the small screen since the DC animated universe in the early 2000s. Again, it's not as good as Superman 1978. It's not going to win any Hugos, but it is still a damned good show. You should be watching it. I do remain optimistic, a little less nervous than I was last week or the week before, but still a little bit nervous, because it's certainly still possible to frack this show up. And considering all the people who've been involved in Arrowverse, it is certainly possible to frack it up more. So I am cautiously optimistic, but I am still more optimistic than maybe I was 2 weeks ago, a week ago. If they continue on this and I start to feel like I can trust them, more power. I'm getting there. They're doing a good job so far. With a couple of minor exceptions. The stuff that I'm talking about, totally nitpicky. If you don't live around here and you aren't struck by the fact that, hey, wait a minute, that's not the way things are done. Or you haven't lived in a small town, you go, hey, wait a minute, that's not how people react when there's a car bomb. If you don't know these things, you won't necessarily notice it. They're very small stuff. WandaVision. I tell you, I have kind of made a vow that I will not discuss Disney or Disney intellectual properties on this show anymore. And that is in part because of how they are supporting genocide, explicitly supporting genocide, and they say so in the credits for Mulan, the live-action Mulan. They have credited and thanked the exact place that is currently rounding up religious minorities and throwing them into real concentration camps. Not concentration camps like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wanted to call the the southern border of the United States. Those aren't concentration camps, you dumbass. The conditions in those things are not good, but they are not concentration camps. What the Chinese are actually doing is taking religious minorities and putting them in concentration camps and killing them on purpose in horrible ways. They are actual literal concentration camps. And in Mulan, Disney outright thanked them. I kind of figure, like, you got to have some amount of ethics. I get it. Disney, you want that Chinese dollar. It is huge. But to me, you guys already have everything. You have every intellectual property of note at this point, with the exception of DC and Star Trek. You have everything else, for God's sake. You can afford to have some ethics. And beyond that, of course, there's how they've treated Gina Carano and anybody who's left at Che Guevara. Regardless of what their morons say at stockholder meetings, that's odious. But to me, the biggest thing is that just they're outright supporting genocide. I can't support that. So, as a rule, I'm not going to be talking about their stuff. You want to know my opinion about WandaVision? I thought it was very interesting early on, but what we're really seeing here, more than anything else, is set up for other movies. You know, the deal with I blanked on her name, the sword agent, that is clearly setting up for Captain Marvel 2. Everything that was going on with Wanda, clearly setting up for Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. This is all fun kind of setup stuff. The fact that it turned into the usual CGI slugfest didn't surprise me particularly. I was looking at them going, okay, you know what they were doing in the beginning with making, you know, these basically not exactly parodies, but kind of, you know, matches to various eras sitcoms, I thought was very interesting. But I still know exactly what was going on with it. I still knew exactly what was going on. Wanda had created all of this stuff. It wasn't any kind of surprise to me. And when it ended, I went, okay, this is a setup for other movies. It's what they sometimes do. You know, they take characters and do stuff with them so they're in the right positions to be having off and doing some other kind of movie. The MCU is the world's biggest, longest TV series. Biggest, longest, biggest budget TV series. And that's not to take anything away from Kevin Feige, because I think he's done a brilliant job of doing that. I can't think of anybody who has shepherded an intellectual property so well that it actually fits together for the most part, and with occasional little things where they maybe did a false start here and then changed their direction. But, you know, that thing fit together. And still does, and I got to give him a lot of credit for that. But it is still the biggest extended television series in the history of cinema, and this is just another piece. It's setting it up for other pieces of what's to come. What bothers me more than anything is the reactions that people are having, because I'm subbed to a bunch of reactors, and they're all like, really, you know, oh, poor Wanda, and I'm like, poor Wanda. She just like turned a couple of thousand people into meat puppets for like 2 weeks. You know, just absolutely terrorized them. And I'm sorry, even if you're upset, it's not a pass. You know, if she was at the end, oh, I don't know, this isn't going to change how these people see me. And I'm like, well, it shouldn't. You're the villain here, actually, in real life. Yeah, Agatha was bad, but you started it. You're the villain. You're doing all of this. It was within your power the whole time. So I see her as a supervillain, and I'm surprised that other people don't. That's one of those deals where I just look at it and go, that's a supervillain. That's supervillain stuff we're talking about here. So, Monica Rambeau's Photon or Spectrum. Yes, that's what they're setting up for the next Captain Marvel movie. I have this sneaking suspicion that they are going to backtrack with Brie Larson because she is so divisive politically. Yeah, she's the sort of woke person they want to have, but she's not nice about it at all. If you watch, you know, stuff with her, she's interviews with you know, where she's with other cast members from like Endgame and stuff. It's real clear that they don't like her very much. And you know, the one with Jeremy Renner is just tells volumes. You know, interviewers talking about how do you approach this, blah blah blah, and she says, well, you know, I'm a woman, so I feel like I have a responsibility for representation, blah 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 blah. And they switch over to Jeremy Renner, and he says, well, I don't really think I have any of that. I'm just, you know, I do my best as an actor. You know, very full of herself, at least on the surface, and I think they're going to backtrack with her a bit and move her out. And move, you know, Monica more in. And that's why we had setting that up. You may notice, by the way, because I did, because I'm a secret master of fandom, that the costume that she's wearing, the outfit she's wearing that was apparently issued to her by Sword is, in fact, one of the costumes that was used by the Ms. Marvel version of Captain Marvel, because that character has a lengthy, weird history, backstory, that, frankly, I'm not completely up on. But, yeah, she's got the costume now. You know, Wanda's off doing her thing, which I think is going to lead straight into Doctor Strange 2. This was just, for me, one of those properties that was setting things up and creating a false sympathy that really wasn't deserved. You know, Wanda was the villain in that piece. She really was. She was the big villain. and to try to make her out as though she was somehow, you know, you excuse it because she's like, oh, well, I felt so upset, and I'm like, you don't get to terrorize a couple of thousand people just because you feel upset. That's supervillain stuff. So watching the reactors, I'm just like, wait, did you guys not have? Were you watching something totally different? Critical Drinker did a review of it that I think he hit the nail on the head with that. He's the only guy I've watched who really just said, hey, wait a minute, this here is supervillain stuff that you're doing. You know, this is not something that you should feel sorry for Wanda about. This should be like, okay, how do we stop her from ever doing this again? You know. Anyway, that's what little I have to say about it, really. Again, I don't generally want to get too terribly into Disney properties. I just think that they have more money than God. They have more money than any other media company that's in existence. They're going to pick up more stuff. I keep thinking probably when they finally succeed, when Paramount Plus finally succeeds in running themselves into the ground, Disney may pick up Paramount and all of its intellectual properties. You know, they've got so much. Same thing with DC. They could very well wind up with the DC universe because those are going straight to the crapper. They have so much. They can afford to have ethics. They can afford to say, no, I think we'll shoot Mulan somewhere other than China, you know, somewhere other than the specific province where they are killing people. You know, and we are not going to be saying thank you to them. I mean, God knows there's got to be a million locations within the United States or Canada that's going to look enough like China that you could shoot there. You know? And for that matter, God knows how much of it was on, you know, green screen anyway. You can afford to have ethics. You can, you know, even if you release your movies in China, you can still afford to have the ethics of not, you know, getting the active involvement of people who are doing horrible, horrible things. So like I say, in general, I don't want to really talk about it that much, even though it cuts me off from a lot of stuff. Star Wars, DC, but Marvel, MCU, cuts me off from a lot of that stuff. Maybe I'll make, you know, an occasional break from that like I did with WandaVision, but I did that mostly because my take is totally different. I'm not looking at Wanda as though she's somebody who should be given a lot of sympathy. I'm looking at her as, oh, this is a supervillain. This is a freaking outright supervillain who has been terrorizing thousands of people for a couple of weeks. That's not something you go, oh, poor Wanda, she lost her kid and the Vision again. It's like, no, she's never been in that position in the first place. You know, so that's my take on that. You know, I don't actually have a hell of a lot else to say about much of anything. This week was remarkably quiet with respect to that. I guess I would certainly suggest, as always, let me find it, that you pay heed to Tulsi Gabbard.
The mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th to try to stop Congress from carrying out its constitutional responsibilities were behaving like domestic enemies of our country. But let's be clear. The John Brennans, Adam Schiffs, and the oligarchs in big tech who are trying to undermine our constitutionally protected rights and turn our country into a police state with KGB-style surveillance are also domestic enemies and much more powerful and therefore dangerous than the mob that stormed the Capitol. Now, John Brennan said,
so I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of the country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
Now, President Biden, I call upon you and all members of Congress from both parties to denounce these efforts by the likes of Brennan and others to take away our civil liberties that are endowed to us by our Creator and guaranteed in our Constitution. If you don't stand up to these people now, then our country will be in great peril.
Ain't so much a love fest with her, Drop of Truth. It's just that I want to have that out there because she's the only sane one that's saying anything useful. This last big, gigantic 1.9 trillion, throw more dead on the fire, virus relief bill that they had wasn't just for virus relief. They obviously had lots of other stuff in there, including some anti-domestic terrorism stuff that would be exactly what she's talking about. I mostly just want to throw this out there, and will consistently do it until such time as they drag me away as a libertarian who is part of their unholy alliance to bring down the United States, or whatever the hell Brennan thinks we are. Despite the fact that you couldn't get us to do anything collectively if you held guns to our heads. Libertarians, man, you talk about, herding cats. There's herding cats for you. So, I guess with that out of the way, it's only been about an hour and a half. That's not necessarily the most horrible thing in the world. My show seems to be more approachable on demand if it's not like 3 hours long. So unless someone else has something you'd like me to talk about, I guess that is probably all I had to say about that. I would certainly love to keep the conversation going, so please leave your comments, your questions, your nasty remarks. I'll do my best to respond to you. So thanks for watching. That's all the time that we have today for this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.